Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Write Good Books podcast. I'm Jason, and I'm here with our co-host Scott Michael Childers.
Hello.
Hey Scott, so when I talk to new writers or non-writers, one of the things I'm almost always asked is, how do you find time to write? And that's what we're going to talk about this week.
Well, first you get a time machine.
Because that's what you might need, because time is more valuable than money.
Yes. Okay, I'd be a little flippant about the time machine crack. But I think you're on the right track. If you treat your time like it's money, and how you spend that time and be thoughtful about it, I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind throughout both of our methods that we'll describe today.
The most important thing is spending that time wisely, like you just said. I think I had to learn early on, if writing was going to be a priority to me, there were other things I was going to have to cut. TV was a big one. I don't really watch any TV anymore. And another one is sadly sleep. But you make time when you can. I've got 3 young kids, so right now I schedule most of my writing time at the end of the day after they go down. So I've got about an hour and a half a day, so I have to make that 90 minutes count. I can't spend any time web surfing or on Facebook. The exception is, book marketing on Facebook, but that's a topic for another day. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do is I break that 90 minutes down. I'll usually say 3 chunks of 30 minutes at a time. I'll spend 30 minutes on a blog post, and then I'll stop and take a break, go 30 minutes on fiction, stop and take a short break, and then go back to either finish the blog post or keep writing fiction if I feel like I'm on a roll. It's kind of based on a priority. If I don't need to work on a blog post, I might just go a straight hour on fiction. I run my e-zine, themeofabsence.com, so I have to figure in my slush pile readings and into that as well. What have you found works for you?
Well, one thing that I have to say up front is that my day-to-day schedule is nowhere near as stable as yours.
And how I make mine stable with 3 kids, I'll never know.
Yeah. For me, the demands of my day job, I can be in the office from 8 to 4, 9 to 5, and then there are other days where I leave my house at 7:30 in the morning and don't come back until 9 or 10 that night. So for me, I tried doing the set schedule like you do, like many writers do. But that was not working for me because I'd miss a day and then I'd be a little disheartened by it. I couldn't get back to it. And I'd always be feeling like I was trying to catch up for the day I missed. And so for me, I really emphasize the phrase priority, just like you had talked about. But for me, the priority is when I do have those moments in front of a keyboard or at home, with no other obligations, the first priority is get my writing in. How long I write depends on how long I have that day, what type of things I'm trying to get done, what are my deadlines, those type of things, as opposed to I'm going to write an hour and a half every day. I can't afford that because my time is eaten up by the thing that pays the insurance bills. So yeah, I'm really focusing on those times where I do have, an hour here, half an hour there. That's when I get my writing in.
I think it's really important, if you know you have a half hour, if you go into that half hour with a game plan, it can be more productive than going into 3 hours without a game plan. If you know, I've got 30 minutes, I've got to get 500 words written in this 30 minutes. That's probably more than I'm capable of, but for a normal person, 300 words in 30 minutes is approachable. I think if you plan that ahead and do it, that really helps me knowing ahead what I want to work on.
Yeah, and I'll say that if I had more time, I'd spend more time on the business of being an author. I don't, so a lot of the things that you were talking about, doing the Facebook for the book or selling the book and that type of stuff, I let that slide oftentimes until I actually have a book that I'm trying to market it. And those days, I'm not writing. I'm selling or I'm marketing. unless I happen to have like a whole weekend where I can do a good chunk of them. So yeah, there's a lot of things that if you have a stable schedule, you can be more on top of social media. I sacrifice that to get my writing done.
Which is highly important. One thing I try to do is take some of that marketing and some of that social media and spread it out throughout the day. I don't do a lot on Facebook and Twitter, but I try to keep it at least active enough to interact with people a little bit and market my book a little bit. I do a lot on Pinterest to market the blog as well, so I'll do that during my lunch break.
Doing things when you have a little bit of time, you do little things.
Yeah, finding little things you can slip in and out. But as far as when you have a big chunk of time, it works pretty good if I have a goal in sight.
Well, it's just like for the people who have done some sort of sports training or something. You make your practices meaningful. You use your time. You don't just stand around and goof off. You're actually working towards something. And that's not just sports. It's just what popped in my head because I had a coach yell at me because I was just throwing basketballs up and said, "Are you actually aiming?" I said, "Well, no." "Well, then you're wasting both of our time." So that's another point is, yes, you may have a stable schedule and you can spend 2-3 hours a day writing, but is it geared towards something?
Are you actually aiming?
Exactly.
Social media marketing is not going on Facebook and ranting about the political issues of the day. Yeah, it's about interacting with people that are going to want to read what you write,
unless you're a political pundit and that is part of your writing.
Sure. Well, like me, for example, on my author page, I'll go talk a lot about science and paranormal stuff because I write science fiction and paranormal fiction, so I'll share a lot of stories related to that.
Yeah, so again, it's looking at what it is your goals. And Jason and I, we both have different daily goals where you're much more active in the business of writing. And me, I'm a bit of a hermit. I just sit in my hole and I write. And when I have something finished, that's when I'll come out and say, "Oh, I've got something ready for you here."
Does setting a word count goal help you at all?
Sometimes. Like for a NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, NaNoWriMo, that word count goal is a necessity.
Yeah, because that is the goal. That is what you're aiming at. Hit a certain number of words in a certain amount of time. Now, when I'm doing my regular writing, no. I don't have a word count goal.
No, me neither. I've tried that. Stephen King really pushes that idea, set 1,000 words a day goal, and don't do anything else until you hit that. Anytime I've ever tried that, it's just demoralized me. I end up watching the clock and watching my words, and they're not quality words. I like to put a little bit of thought into what I'm writing, so time limits work a lot better for me. I might do something like, say, this weekend I need to finish a short story, and then I might know I need another 1,500 words, give or take, but I won't sit there and say, I'm going to write 1,500 words today, make or break.
Yeah. I think that's also where, for both of us and many of the people listening here, we're doing this in the off hours. There's another thing that we're doing during the day. If it was my full-time job to write, which would be very nice indeed, then the word count becomes very important.
Right.
Because that's how I'm getting paid. Right now, these are the things I'm working on my craft to get to that point. And it may take me a little bit longer, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write and not worry about word counts.
Yeah, we both still have to deal with our day jobs.
Yes. We're not doing this to get out of our day jobs next week. This is down the line. We could probably spend a whole other broadcast talking about day jobs that'll get you closer to your writing goals, but we haven't found those yet, so it might be a while.
No, we haven't. Another thing that is important for time management is, at least for me, it's really helped to get a lot of the clutter out of my life. I don't have a writing room right now because all of the rooms in our house have children living in them. So my writing room is right now our kitchen. it really helps when the kitchen table is clean and the dishes are put away. It's just one less thing to look at when I'm trying to get my words out before I go to bed. And decluttering has really helped that for a side note, I suppose.
Well, you're not spending your time making the place to write.
Right.
Your place to write is there, and you know what space it is, so you can focus on that.
And I also function better as a writer when the daily chores are done. I can't write knowing that I still have to get the kids' clothes ready for the next day, get the cat litter done, get the dishes put away. So a lot of that life priority, if I get rid of the maintenance stuff before I start writing, I'm a lot more relaxed and ready to just focus on writing and know that, you know, when I get to the point where I stop writing for the night, I go to bed. Go to bed happy, usually.
Well,
if I'm happy with the work I did.
That's another case. But the distractions, that's another part of it. And sometimes, I'll tell you with my method, sometimes that doesn't work. It's like, I've got time to write. And then that's when I have a cat crawling in front of the screen. It's like, well, apparently I have to deal with this cat.
I think we all have the cat problem.
Yeah. I'm thinking I should give my cat co-writer status sometimes, though.
It's that bad.
Yeah. Like this. What you wrote is so bad you can't even look at it. But
that's funny. And when you get stuck, that's a big problem. If you don't have a lot of time and you get writer's block, then what do you do? For me, I have to move on to something else. Otherwise, I'll just sit there and watch the minutes fly by and nothing will come out. So that's when I'll move on. If I'm working on some fiction and get to a point where I don't know what to do, I'll give it a couple of minutes, and if I'm not making progress, I'll put it aside for a little bit and work on the blog or, work on another story or edit something else.
Yeah. For me, oftentimes I'm writing nonfiction or historical fiction. And so that's when I go back to my source materials. And for me, I reread and look for other angles and other connections. So I'm still working towards something. Oftentimes, when I have a writer's block on a certain part, I can jump to another part and do a little bit of writing. And sometimes, I don't know if you've done this, Jason, I'll do a little bit of revisions on what I've already written. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, that will spur me, back into why am I writing this? Where was I starting? And then, I've done a little bit of revisions. I've refreshed my memory on things, and then I can get back to the part that I got stuck in.
Yeah, we'll do a podcast on writer's block, or 2 or 3 somewhere down the line. But I think a big thing when I get writer's block, I think it's because I'll know I need to write a scene, and what's going to happen in that scene gets me kind of bored. So what I'll do to move on is I'll just kind of put a little cliff note. Here's what I think is going to happen in this scene, and then move on to something that's not boring to me. And in the meantime, try to figure out what to do to make that other scene more exciting.
Yeah. And maybe it's a scene you don't need at all.
Yeah, that's very important.
It could be it's boring because it's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when we get to even a couple other ones that we're going to be recording pretty soon, it's that discussion. Is this relevant to what I'm doing? So,
right.
Much like this part of the discussion, is this relevant to time management? Yes, it is.
It is. It all is.
It's spending your time wisely.
Where does research fit in for your time management?
I consider my research separate from my writing.
Okay.
And so, if I'm starting a new project, the research is going to take a higher priority. If I'm deep into my writing, that research takes a secondary part. It's when I start getting stuck or things are a little confusing or it's like something doesn't quite make sense, I go back to the research. But I do a good chunk of my research for, again, the nonfiction and historical fiction. I'm doing that instead of doing a lot of writing because I know later on that's going to flip.
I'm terrible with that. I'll write with the browser open, and every time I need to look something up, I look it up. And that's okay in theory, but it leads to the temptation of clicking around on Wikipedia, and all of a sudden 20 minutes have gone by, and I'm reading about, who starred in Friday the 13th Part 7 when I was really looking up a line from Part 3.
No,
So if you use a browser, you got to be careful.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's where having that priority, and like you were saying with yours, you're breaking it into half-hour chunks. So at this point, I got to stop this part and move on. So
it's also easy for me to do that with my theme of absence, but setting a limit on that really helps so I don't get lost in the submissions. But we'll talk about theme of absence some other time.
Yeah.
I think we're probably a good point to stop for now.
Yeah, let's not waste our listeners' time so they can get out and write.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Visit us on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com. Check back next time.
See ya.